Hello, and welcome to the Realigned Journey, your unfiltered guide to self-discovery and reconnection. I'm CieraSambrosky, your host, and together we'll deep dive the topics that have caused us to lose touch with ourselves and explore ways to reconnect to our true self. This week, I have with me Lilli Bewley, who is a dating coach for finding love with over 10 years of experience in personal development. She herself went from just surviving in life to thriving in love and purpose. Currently, she is helping single and successful women love dating and find true love. Lilli is on a mission to educate people on how dating can be fun again after a divorce, even in their 30s and 40s and 50s, and even if they've been single forever. We have the ability to create magnetic energy in our dating lives, even if we have to perform and be high achievers in other parts of our lives. Her signature quiz, the Feminine Dating Archetype Quiz, will show women their blocks to love and help them find their true love match. Hi, Lilli. Thanks for being here.
Hello, Sierra. I'm so excited to be here and have this conversation with you. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yes, me too. For the audience and listeners out there, so I saw a clip of Lilli on another podcast, and I just was like, "Oh, I love her energy. I just have to have a conversation. I know there's good juiciness in you, wisdom that so many people need to hear, want to hear." So, the way that I start these episodes is always by asking my guest about a specific event or experience that really redirected them and realigned them, took them to a place where they had not ever imagined that they would go, or being able to see themselves in their lives in a whole new way.
Mm.
So, Lilli, where was that? What was that
Oh,
for you?
wow. Yeah. Well, thank you for this opportunity once again to talk a little bit more about, dating and love and whatever's up for your audience. I'm sure will come through you. Um, I think the thing that most, that opened my eyes, it's kind of my first big awakening, the time when I had to realign myself or I literally was going to die, inside,
Mm,
outside, spiritually, mentally, physically, was this time in my life where um I had done everything in my life up until that point that everyone else had told me to do.
mm,
I always like to say that I was born with a big heart. I'm loving, I'm caring, I'm kind at my core. I grew up in a household where there was trauma, there was abuse, both covert and overt. I didn't have a great model for a healthy, spiritual, loving relationship. And through that time, I to survive, I adapted some survival skills, which was basically toning down who I was, toning down my voice, toning down my intuition. And this is all subconscious. If
mm-hmm,
you're in an environment like that when you're younger, all we all our subconscious knows to do is how do we survive.
mm-hmm,
And through growing up through that is I survived by making other people happy. I survived by, people talk a lot about being a people pleaser. I was more than a people pleaser. I made people love themselves so much, but I did not love myself in that same way. And so I kind of got to this point in my life where I was really, really good at achieving. I was really, really good at getting validation. I was really, really good at, getting these things on my resume that look good to people on the outside.
mm-hmm.
And I was really, really good at getting hot men, for example. I could be really good at that. And everything in my life, what I realized kind of hit ahead when I had the six-figure job. I had the car. I had the house. I had the boyfriend. One on the outside it looked good, but on the inside it definitely wasn't.
Mhm,
I had the banging body, all of the things that life, my parents and my friends told me that I should get to be happy, I was celebrated for, right? Um, I hit this place in my life where I was still desperately unhappy.
mhm,
And desperately unhappy, like like I said, dying inside, physically,
Mm-hmm.
mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Um, and that was the moment that some reason it just hit. And I remember it was on my birthday, and my boyfriend and I had gotten in a fight, and it just did not make sense to me. So the world that I had created, the world that I had lived in, just did not align with me anymore because it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't making me happy. And it turns out that I was living more on self-sacrifice and self-abandonment than I was self-fulfillment and self-actualization.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the time that I didn't know where I was shifting at that point. If anyone has been through that kind of what they call like a dark night of the soul, it is really just it feels like a death. It feels like a death that you experience, and you don't know where you're going. You are
Oh, for
just
sure.
in, yeah, you are just in that death. You are in that pain. You are in that sorrow. You are in that darkness. But what it did do is it did help redirect me into trying to learn about a different life that I could have. Like we I grew up in a place where we didn't have conversations like
Mm-hmm.
this. We didn't have conversations about life, about emotions, about healing, about what's happening inside of us, about our truths, for example. And so when I started to learn that was actually something that people actually did, like books and things like that about codependency was the first kind of thing that I started to learn about when that first happened. It really kind of opened my eyes. And so my from that point on, that it has been a relearning process, and it will always now be for me. That's the paradigm that I live by. It's my
Mm-hmm.
purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It will always be about relearning who I am and facilitating a life that helps me be who I am, in
Mm-hmm.
my life.
Yeah. Wow, so much in there. And it's funny because as I listen to you talk, I think, oh, you could be describing my childhood in the early parts
Mhm.
of my life
Mhm.
too, except I think you say it and speak it much better than I do. But so much of that I can relate to. And I always say who I am now is so dramatically and drastically different. They're like people that have met me even in the last 10 years, and I say to them, no, you don't understand. Like, I wasn't just a people pleaser. I was a complete and total doormat. I was
Mhm.
afraid of my own voice. I was afraid of conflict. I lived with such deep internal anxiety. It didn't matter how it looked on the outside. Everybody on the
Mhm.
outside thought I was really outgoing and responsible and like doing all these great things. And quite honestly, I was a total fucking mess on the
Mhm.
inside. I really, really was.
Mhm.
And yeah, and it was a whole series of things for me also that really, I think it's always been like this great big unshedding,
Mhm.
um, this deep uncovering. And I've had more than one dark night in the soul, lucky me.
Mhm.
Um, and they are deeply, deeply painful and extremely dark. And for me personally, it felt more than lost. It felt completely abandoned. And
Mhm.
I think because I had not, to that point in my life, established how to not abandon myself,
Mhm.
the pain was literally um made me think about ending my own life. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even know why I'm here.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah.
Same.
What was that process of learning? Well, first of all, I guess I should say, do you identify with the fact that you had just like abandoned yourself, that you had never been able to even take up for yourself? Like, uh,
Yeah.
you said about self-sacrificing, and certainly I
Yeah.
relate to that. But
Yeah. I think, you know, I'm at this level right now where I think women don't realize, like we know probably people that are listening to this podcast, probably women are a lot like you. Like they've been through the shit they've done their healing work. They've gotten to a place where they're safe, instead, like there was a time of definite unsafety, whether that be
Yes.
physical, emotional, mental, whatever.
Yep.
But we get to a point where we're safe. We know we're strong. We know we can do anything. Like, after all the shit that's happened to us in the past, we know that we can do anything. Like, I always
Mm-hmm.
say for myself, it's a wonder I'm not in jail or dead. I've never been,
Mm-hmm.
never been, obviously I'm
It
not
could have
dead,
went
but
that way for sure. I relate.
exactly,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And I know that resonates with people, because, and people don't really talk about that. But going back to your question, I think where we are now in development is we don't it's hard for us to recognize, because we've been through all of this shit in the past and we know that we're strong, we know that we can overcome things. It's hard for us to recognize, especially if we're seeing, I focus on dating and relationships.
Mm-hmm.
If you're seeing a certain pattern happening outside of yourself or inside of yourself in dating and relationships, it's hard for us to recognize that we may be self-sacrificing and self-abandoning.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, to answer your question. And this comes up a lot with some of my feminine dating archetypes. This comes up with, like, the goddess woman, for example, who has done a lot of personal development work, but for some reason, really, well, I know what reason, which is what I do to help women heal,
Right.
but we grasp on to this helper archetype. We grasp onto this. I know a lot of things because I have been through it. I know how to diagnose your attachment style.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I know what your love language is, but the pattern isn't broken with our knowledge. And what happens is that we can stay in this pattern of, if our energy is always going outwards, then we are self-sacrificing ourselves.
Mm-hmm. You just gave me chills when you said that. Go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah. Well, and if we are, even if we're putting out the energy of something like, I'm dating right now and I know he's avoidant, so I know I got to be a certain way. And even that is is little micro self abandonment, because what we're
Absolutely.
doing is we're trying to, and this is like very nuanced, but it's subconscious and it's unconscious based off of
Mm-hmm.
what's happened to us in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we've been through a lot of shit,
Mm-hmm.
if we're still at a point where we're seeing patterns, there are these little micro aggressions of self-abandonment and self-sacrifice
Mm-hmm.
happens inside of us. And what
Mm-hmm.
happens is, the scary thing about what happens inside of us when it comes to trauma is that we unknowingly re-traumatize ourselves and parts of ourselves on the inside when we do this. So
Mm.
until we do the deeper level healing work, the root cause healing work for why we're doing this, we will continue to perpetrate ourselves on the inside the way that we were perpetrated on the outside.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I just got chills when you said that.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. There's so much truth and goodness in there.
Mhm.
I know for me personally, one of the ways that was impactful for me, you talked about like these microaggressions that we're actually perpetrating against ourselves, right? Re-traumatizing ourselves. One of the things that helped me, because I had such awareness around certain things for myself, because I've done the work, because
Mhm.
I've done traditional therapy and I've read all the books and have done all these other things and energetic, like I'm pretty much, do you think you can heal me? Okay, I'll take it. Um, um, that whole concept has shifted for me too, but just in the last year or so. Um, and what really impacted me was someone said to me, "Do you realize that in a shape or form, you're actually trying to manipulate the outcome and
Mm.
manipulate the other person emotionally.
Mm.
And so I think because I still was not at a place of a deep enough self respect
Mhm.
and preservation, like, and putting myself first. Like, I had done a lot of work, I'd gotten there for it. Um, and so the concept that I was traumatizing myself, I could see it and recognize it, but it like wasn't enough to like, I don't know, get me to figure out how to do something differently. I wanted to, but it wasn't
Mhm.
clicking. And then
Mhm.
when somebody said, "Do you realize though that by kind of still self-sacrificing, by still being to the point where you are not compromising, you're past compromising. It's actually this way that you're trying to manipulate the outcome and manipulate that person to stay." And that was really eye-opening for me.
Mhm.
I had to go, oh shit.
Mhm.
Because because I had been so emotionally, mentally manipulated by other people for so much of my life, the idea that I was doing it in this really nuanced,
Mhm.
unconscious, even if it was slight, it was
Mhm.
there.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting. You know, you mentioned of you had done all the work, so consciously you could see it, but
Mhm.
the subconscious and unconscious patterns still ran inside your body, inside of your emotions, inside of your behaviors and your thoughts. And this is something that people don't talk about enough, I don't think, because in personal development work, it's very focused on your thoughts. It's very
Mhm.
focused on your
Agree.
brain, you know, it's very focused on, you know, saying the affirmations. You know, if you're talking about dating, it's very focused on just writing a letter out to your soulmate and they're going to
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
come,
Marrying
right?
yourself, all that other
Yeah, or
that
just go
people.
love. Yeah, or just go, you know, you hear it was breaking when this first came out 20 years ago was in order for somebody to love you, you have to love yourself. And
Mhm.
what's happened with that is because we're focused on the thoughts, changing our lives, or affirmations. If you have deep rooted trauma, it's okay that affirmations don't work for you
Mhm.
because affirmations do not change your behavior. They'll change maybe your thoughts for a short term, for a short amount of time, but unconsciously and subconsciously those patterns will run until you rewire them in your brain and your body. And you don't do that by trying to gloss over them or push them aside or to frame them as these are negative thoughts. I don't want to think them anymore because
Mhm.
they're always there for a reason. It's something
Mhm.
that I do in my work is we really dive into the unconscious and subconscious. That's all that I do. Like I live in the deep.
Mhm.
This is what I was born to do.
Love that.
Yeah. And so we look at the subconscious and unconscious patterns that are running in your life. We get to the reason why, whether you know it consciously or even that you don't. And we start to do the healing work. And the healing work is more about instead of what everyone else in your life has said, what gurus say, which is
Mhm.
turn away from them, push them aside in a box and push them away, but what we do in this work is actually turn towards them, start to understand them, and start to
Yeah.
have a new relationship with them.
Yeah.
That's really what the healing work for me and my clients is really all about.
Yeah. And being able to reframe it and find the gift in it, right?
I think eventually you come to that. I
Yeah.
don't think that if you
Oh
start with
no.
that, then essentially what you're doing is you're gaslighting and overriding
Yeah.
yourself. But eventually
Yeah.
you do get to that gratitude piece.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
if
I
I
didn't
were
say
just to tell
gratitude.
you like, yeah, if I yeah, yeah, if
That
I were
doesn't mean that I don't recognize where the gift is, and but I'm not always real freaking grateful for it. I will be honest
yeah,
about that.
you don't get the learning until you're out of it.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. Is people will try to, you know, some people call it spiritual bypassing.
Mm-hmm.
People will try to make meaning of something when you're in it and you just can't.
Yeah.
right? And that's what like when you're in it, that's when the healing happens. Like I said, I focus on dating, I focus on relationships. When I go through my programs with my clients, depending on where they are in their journey, you don't, if someone's listening to this and they don't want to date, you don't have to date if we work together. But we can. And one of the reasons, if we have done enough foundational healing work and my intuition is saying, okay, let's go put you out there in the dating world with support, the right kind of support, not just your friends and your family, because sometimes your friends and your family give you shitty advice like, oh, just
Yep.
go have fun. Just there are many fish in the sea. It's gonna happen when you least expect it. But they don't understand what's happening inside of you. The shame, the blame, the anxiety, all, the confusion, the frustration. It's very hard for most people to understand what's happening inside of you.
Mhm.
But going back to like, you don't learn until you're out of it. One of the things that I do in my programs, if the client is there, is we put her out in dating with me as support. So I always say dating is Trigger Town. And what we do is we go to Trigger Town together. And what we learn along the way are the triggers that come up are the points that we need to heal. And I think after you do the healing or in the process, towards the end of the process, you do understand the gift, you do understand the learning opportunity, but it's very hard to do that at the beginning because again, you would just be glossing over kind of what's up for you. Be like,
Mhm.
if you're anxious about, oh, I need to find what the learning experience is, I need to find out what the gift is, then you're really actually pushing energy outside of yourself than looking in.
Mhm. Yeah, and allowing yourself to just process and feel whatever is coming up. And even I think, I mean, you can agree or disagree, jump in.
Hmm.
I think part of it is not trying to evaluate. Like I always say, this whole healing and personal development thing has largely become a hamster wheel for people to keep looking for the reasons why they are not good, why they are not whole, why they are not healthy, why they are not and so you will get to that place. Like I said, I have for myself where, I get it. I get what it's trying to show me. I'm not, I don't always feel super grateful for it. I'm like, it's still shitty. It doesn't change.
Sure.
But some of it is just getting in the muck of it, just sitting with it and
Hmm.
saying, this feels really terrible.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
not trying to poke at it and not trying to, for me and for what I experienced and have witnessed in a lot of people that I know and a lot of people that I've worked with, even in, such a different arena. Well, not really, but it seems like it to a lot of people on the outside. Um, you know, being able to just sit with yourself and allow yourself to feel what you feel is actually one of the most precious gifts. And I think if we look at how do I heal, how do I get better, just love and accept yourself in
Hmm.
all the messiness
Hmm.
and not
Very,
from a mantra, not
yeah,
not from an
very hard. Yeah.
affirmation.
And I do want to put a pin in that and say that's very hard and very uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Here's why. Is
Sucks
because
on a regular basis, no matter how long you've done it or how
yeah.
many times. It
So
does.
yeah. Yeah. And here's why. Is because you have your trauma because people in the past have told you, whether they're in actions or words or behaviors, that what you're experiencing is bad.
Absolutely.
So you take on that paradigm and it's reflected inside of yourself.
Hmm.
So it's very hard to sit, it's very hard to sit with things that are uncomfortable inside of us because we haven't been like it's new. We haven't done this for decades of our lives. We're not taught to do this. Like in my family, we weren't taught. I'm much better at avoiding things than I am at seeing them, hearing them, understand and knowing them and feeling them. But when I did cross that line where you're talking about, Sierra, of time after time of, oh, this actually feels good at the end of the day. It feels aligning. It feels like I know myself. It feels like all different parts of me aren't so loud anymore. It's really just my highest self that I'm sitting with, and
Mm-hmm.
my relationship with God or spirit or universe. That's a whole, whole other conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very difficult. It's very hard. Again, once again, if the advice is just go sit with your feelings, like that could actually be very uncomfortable and very very hard to do if it's not practiced, in
Mm-hmm.
little micro steps. It's practice. I have
Mm-hmm.
I have a client, she's a doctor, and typical doctor, she's had to go through school. She's very successful. She has operated in her head most of her life,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So what does that do? And this is not by her own means, or by her own like choice,
Right.
right? So,
Right.
in her family, emotions were not cherished. They're not recognized. In fact, as we go back and look at things that happened to her in her life, they were actually shunned, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
as a child, she shut down those emotions in order to stay safe, to be loved, to have food, to have shelter, to have some kind of connection,
Yep.
right? So we were actually talking about this the other day, and it's very hard for her, even present day, even though she knows she wants to feel the emotions. It is hard for her body somatically to
Mm-hmm.
even let any of those emotions in, right? So
Yeah.
so our work really is to titrate between, well, what are you feeling? Why is that there? And just do this work. And the healing work, like I said, is not forced upon you to do this. It's almost like different parts of you are, you talk about inner child work, like different parts of you are at different ages inside of you. And I always think about this, the analogy that I think about when it comes to healing, if I can recognize different parts of myself, what I essentially do is I lean down and I get on its level and I look them in the eye, and I really tell it whatever it needs to be told. Whether that's I love you, I'm not going to leave you, you're perfect as you are, which is a big one for me. But it's very difficult. Again, if you're not used to this type of behavior, this internal, looking at your internal emotional environment in that way, it can be very disturbing. But that's kind of like what the healing work is like, in and out, in and out, in and out of doing that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You had brought up something about our connection and ultimately our relationship to God, spirit, whatever you want to
Mhm.
call it. And you were like, oh,
Mhm.
that's another conversation. But I would like to just drop it in here for a minute longer.
Yeah.
Um, how impactful do you feel our relationship being able to create that connection in a real relationship with that higher power that we recognize is
Mm.
ultimately in our healing, in our self love, and in finding healthy and whole relationships?
Mm. Well, I can tell you from today, I am in the healthiest, most spiritual. This man is deeper than I am. Like I always got from my friends giving me dating advice. Oh, don't, like, I'm a deep ass person.
Mm-hmm.
I always got my, like, from my friends, oh, don't go so deep on the first date. So I would try to perform and, be someone I wasn't, and that never ended very well.
Mm-hmm.
So this man has actually brought me closer to God than I could have done myself. And the how I got here was, then this is my journey. And what I've noticed is, especially when it comes to the spiritual aspect of things, it's different for different women, different
Mm-hmm.
people. But how I got here is that I relied on myself my whole
Mm-hmm.
life because I had to.
Yep.
Hyper independence is a trauma response. And I, even still to this day, I'm healing different layers of my hyper independence inside of myself. So that even meant with spirit. People, I
Mm-hmm.
remember vividly, people would ask me, what do you believe in? I believe in myself, is what I would say. And so there was no room inside of my system, my emotional system, my heart, any place inside my body for anyone but me, because I was in survival most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I started to do the healing work, the constant feedback that I get also from my clients and what happened with me is that you start to feel space inside of yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Over time, you start to feel this space. If you're going through life, even if you've done all of the healing work, yet you still have to maintain this grip on control, on perfectionism, on your different aspects of your life, then you don't really have, not only do you not have room for spirit, you don't have room for an epic love, truly spiritual relationship either.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do the healing work is a lot about different parts, wounded parts of you, seeing that you can actually make decisions for the benefit of the system in real life.
Mm.
Who you choose, how you set boundaries. Do you stick with them? Are you able to speak up for your needs and your wants and desires? Do you know what your needs and wants and desires are? Are you listening to your intuition, or are you listening to a wounded part of you that is helping you make these decisions? Right. And
Mm-hmm.
through the healing work, you start to learn about that. And I just imagine like a fist being balled up really tight, and it just starts to loosen and starts to lessen. And that's what happens inside of me, and it happens with my clients too.
Mm-hmm.
And within that space, what happened with me is I started to see a different level of connection with something bigger than myself. This is how I even got into this work,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I started to see hope, like, oh, there's something different than this bullshit life that I had been living before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that's when I really started to have a connection with God and with spirit. And so fast forward to again today, when of course the man that I'm with is bringing me even closer to my version, my relationship and partnership with God and with spirit. And I think you said something really interesting about that question, with that question, Sierra, which is the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Everything in our life we have a relationship with.
Yeah.
Whether that be money, whether that be God, whether that be our job. Obviously, we know we have a relationship with our friends and our families, and some of us are seeking an epic love, true love relationship with a dream partner. Even parts of us inside of ourselves we have relationships with.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and it's a partnership. How many times in your past relationship, let's say romantic relationship, where you say that you're not feeling seen or not feeling heard,
Mm-hmm.
or you're attracting emotionally of unavailable people.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that has to do with relationships inside of yourself with different parts of yourself. So where
Mm-hmm.
are you in your life not seeing and hearing and understand parts of you?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you emotionally abandoning yourself inside of yourself? Because what we know by now is that the alchemization of what we want on the outside has to happen on the inside of us first.
Sure does.
Mm-hmm.
Sure does. And part of why I brought that up was because I know that it was significant for me that I had done a lot of work around the way that I was having relationship with all the people in all the different ways in my life, the way that I was having relationship with myself and the way that I saw myself. And what was really interesting, despite the fact that I'm an intuitive and a medium, people always think like, oh, you must have the most incredible relationship with God, universe, spirit, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And what I can say is that I had cultivated connection. I had cultivated a business relationship
Mm.
that because of my experience as a child, because of religious programming, because of all kinds of things, my message internally that I was operating off of, same, I had gone through, especially when I was younger, I was really hyper independent and I had let a lot of that go. Yet I still did not really feel supported by God. by the universe or spirit.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like they were there for me. I could recognize and see how they showed up and loved and supported all clients, other people in my life, people that random strangers that I encountered. I'd be like, oh my gosh, you are so loved. And I felt it and I meant it. But there was a deep disconnection between that level of relationship with spirit and with myself.
Wow. Well, we see in others what we want to see in ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So that deepening of a trust, that knowing that they weren't just there for other people or, in practice, that there's a deepness there for me. And I will also say that, of course, part of that for me came from religious programming, where in particular, I grew up Catholic. So, we were taught that he was the father.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my father left my life when I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
And my mother was not emotionally, mentally supportive in any way, shape, or form. So guess what? The whole idea of it being a parent was not great for me. That
Mm-hmm.
did not give me warm and fuzzy feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And so outwardly, I could reduce that hyper independence. Outwardly, I had reduced the need to control and be in control and always have a plan and not be able to manage if the plan didn't go the way I wanted it to go. And also, at the same time, I did not feel like life supported me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I didn't have the greatest romantic relationships either.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, that makes sense.
it was all tied in.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's like, some certain things I picked up on, which is trust and
Mm-hmm.
support.
Mm-hmm.
So you went from, you couldn't really trust the relationship that people were saying that you should have with God, which is
Right.
like this father figure, because you didn't really know what a real father figure felt like.
Mm-hmm.
And then the healing that you've been doing, I bet, if I had to guess, you're now able to trust God, the universe, spirit, now maybe or a little bit more, a little bit better, because you can actually trust yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So what's interesting is that, again, what we want on the outside, we have to know how it feels on the inside first.
Yeah.
That is by far the lesson that is really, really hard to learn, because it gets really, really nuanced, especially with women that have done the work, quote
Mm-hmm.
unquote, and reached a
Mm-hmm.
certain level point, but still feel stuck.
Yeah.
Because they know, I know that I should love myself. I know I love myself. I know
Mm-hmm.
that I'm an amazing person.
Mm-hmm.
I know, like I'm a goddess woman, for example, which is one of my feminine dating archetypes. But yet there's still a disconnect between that grip on control, that grip on perfectionism, the types of people that you're attracting in your life. Because there is some element of love that inside of herself that she has just not gotten to yet, because and I know this because I have friends like this, goddess women. Their behaviors don't match up for what they want, what they say they want, and what they say they deserve. And
Mm.
right there is the gap between going from the goddess woman, feminine dating archetype, to the magnetic woman, feminine dating archetype. And again, the magnetic woman is magnet, like you're talking about, this self-trust and this feeling of support inside of herself, so that it's replicated on the outside.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's the way it goes.
Yeah, it is.
One of the things that you said, I want to wrap up with this, if we can. One of the things you had said earlier was, I do remember this. I would say it was probably like the 90s, early 90s maybe, when it came out, which seemed like a revolutionary thing, that you had to learn to love yourself in order to find love, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, this is just my opinion, but it has come to look like the fact that that's kind of bullshit in a lot of ways, because I see a lot of people loving on other people, um finding a version of love that actually looks quite fulfilling, and yet I know for certain that they are a hot mess on the inside. That
Mhm.
I'm like, how did you ever manage to construct what actually is a really loving and healthy and supportive relationship when I know that you are deeply insecure, wounded, and a freaking hot mess all
Mm.
day long? And yet, so for me, I was always like, no, what happens is largely, though again, there's never an absolute around this, you get the love that you are giving to yourself.
Absolutely.
But tell me, I would say what I want to hear from you is this whole take on you have to love yourself in order to be able to receive love.
Mm. My take on that, it is bullshit.
Mhm.
Because I think we're evolved enough now that what you're saying is that the energetic match between what's happening inside of you will always be on what you're attracting outside of you, always. It's a hard realization to come to, and I want to put it, I want to just asterisk that and say that I say this with love. Any motivation of shame and blame is not the motivation that I will ever come from, that I don't want to make anything about what's happening with anyone listening to this bad. There's nothing bad about you. You don't need to be fixed. There's nothing wrong with you. And the fact is that it's a manifestation kind of not strategy, but it's like it's well known that what's
Mhm.
inside of you will be reflected on what's outside of you. What's outside of you will be reflected on what's inside of you. It's a mirror. It's a constant mirror of what's happening.
Mhm.
With the self-love piece, in my opinion, self-love is that has become transactional.
Mm.
Like what your story about and growing up probably in the Catholic faith, it's like it could have been very transactional for you.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, and it's traumatic because shouldn't you just be loved for who you are?
Absolutely. And that is 100% not what we were taught. Like, not only was I not taught that in my home, but I definitely wasn't taught that in my religion.
Yeah,
You earn that shit every single day.
exactly. Exactly. And we're taught that again, we're taught that with money, we're taught that with job, we're taught
Mhm.
that with family if we're not careful
Yeah.
and we're in a different environment, or
Yeah.
even taught that with our friends subconsciously. And this happened with me, in the breakthrough that I had is that what was more important for me were my achievements
Yeah.
because I got what I needed, which was a feeling of love and connection through my achievements. But truthfully, everyone wants to be loved for who they are. Like I always say, like at my core, and I'm really proud of myself and the fact that I can live my life mostly in a loving, caring, and kind space and still be a badass bitch and
Mhm.
and still be a boss
Yeah.
and still have a team and
Yeah.
still have a thriving business and still have money in the bank, right? But we don't learn that throughout the things that we were modeled, society, and all of that as well. So self-love has taken on this idea of, well, everything else I get in my life is transactional. Then let me make self-love transactional. And whether that be getting your nails done, taking a bath, you know, anything like that is awesome. And I love it.
Mhm.
And there's a hard look at like, okay, are you on it? Are you in an if then type of thing? If this happens, then this, because that
Mhm.
is a transaction, right?
Yeah.
If I do this,
Yeah.
then I love myself.
Yeah.
And what I think what self-love is actually two things for me that I live my life by now, which is speak up and show up.
Mhm.
That's self-love. And I do that in every aspect of my life. My partnership in particular is fulfilling and amazing because he wants that from me.
Mhm.
Like that's the type of man that I have in my life now. He wants me to show up. He
Love
wants me to
that.
speak up. When in the past, that has definitely not been the
Yeah.
case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that immediately makes me think, and I don't remember the quote exactly, but there's a famous quote out there that says about um speaking up, using your voice, even if your voice shakes. I don't
Hmm.
remember who
And it
said
will
that.
be. It will
Yeah,
be uncomfortable at the beginning. It was for me.
yeah,
But
yeah.
eventually what happens is our nervous system and our brain, it starts to feel more safe because it
Hmm.
hasn't been safe in the past.
Yeah, I love it, Lilli. I'm gonna end here, but I so love it. I feel like we could have a whole conversation around like the whole nervous system neuroscience thing too.
Oh,
So
we
I
definitely do.
definitely hope that you come back. I have no doubt that whether a woman is looking for a romantic relationship, whether she dreams of being married again or not, if she
Mhm.
just wants to deepen her understanding of love for herself, I
Mhm.
know that you are an amazing resource and person for her to turn to. So I would love for you to share with the listeners the ways that they can connect with you, learn about you, take your quiz, all that.
Yeah.
Share.
Well, thank you so much for this time, Sierra. You're amazing. I can tell you've done your work as well. So it's my people. Um, So yeah, my invitation is for any woman that is either dating, taking a break from dating, avoiding dating, even in a relationship where you want to learn a little bit more about, I talk to a lot of women that are in relationship, but they want to show up better for themselves and their partnership,
Yeah.
their kids. You can go to datingarchetype.com. I would invite you to go to datingarchetype.com. You can take the feminine dating archetype quiz, and it's a 2-minute quiz. It will help you reveal your blocks to love and help you find your true love match. And from there, you can find all the socials, my website, and everything like that.
I love it. That's so fantastic. I'm gonna go take it because I want to see which more I
Yeah,
have
let
to
me
deepen
know.
my own. I would say to deepen my own. That's what I mean. I feel deeply like even if romantic love is not high on your priority list right now, if you just want to love and be better to yourself, I feel like you're an amazing resource and an
Thank you.
awesome gift for that. So
Thank you.
thank you so much for being here
Thanks for
and
having me.
yeah, for joining in. And thank you to all the sojourners out there that have tuned in for another week. As always, share, subscribe, make sure you connect to Lilli and myself on all the social media platforms. And I hope to hear you and see you back again next week.